Welcome back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scaleups, and Early Stage Businesses with your host, Jerry Gadori. And this week, I'm excited to share a conversation with Tyler Hochman, and I hope I pronounced that right. Tyler is a serial entrepreneur, multiple startup founder, and current founder of an exciting company called Four, which helps to let other companies utilize data and analytics to make better decisions for their companies. That was a pretty woefully inadequate introduction. Tyler, help me to expand on that a little bit, please.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thanks for coming.
I started. I've started a number of companies. So the serial entrepreneur part was definitely accurate. And for my most recent venture is For Enterprise. For is a AI solutions architecture firm that's really trying to allow businesses to be and have more availability to do the human part of the business and automate the part that can get automated. And so we build bespoke data pipelines and data architecture for businesses in order to drive a lot of cost efficiency, a lot of productivity efficiency, and then allow the business leaders and the people within the business to focus on the human part. Because I think there's a lot of really cool human elements to a business that can never be replaced, or at least not right now with AI. And so we want to enable people to be able to focus on those while maximizing the efficiency on the stuff that can be automated.
That sounds awesome, Tyler. It's interesting, both in my capacity as host of the show and in my own business, Redbeard Solutions. I work with business leaders all the time, every day, all day. And as it relates to AI, it's been a really, really mixed bag. It seems like if you don't have a bajillion dollars to spend, you can't get a useful outcome. And there's just so many companies that make incredibly large promises and deliver, at risk of sounding rude, just deliver slop, just substandard, error-ridden outputs. So I think that's going to be quite a hurdle as the founder of an AI company to bridge that gap and be one of the folks delivering something useful.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And I think a lot of our clients come to us not even as they come to us in two ways, but primarily not as the first AI firm that they've looked at before. I think it's a very hot subject, and a lot of people are trying to figure out how best to incorporate it in their business, and they get approached by everywhere from very large consulting firms to other more boutique AI solutions firms with very grandiose promises. We're going to revolutionize your business, and we're going to do it in the most cost effective way possible for you. And you get started with these huge ideas, and you realize very quickly it's very expensive, and if you try to target everything, it's very difficult to make work, especially on a budget. And so what we really focus on are, what we describe as point solutions. We have a very intensive diligence process that we work through with our clients because we want to deliver ROI on our technology within 6 months. And
Wow.
so it's actually very differentiated from the people doing this, is that, we want to target such a finite problem. And again, not to say that we won't string together multiple finite problems to then make a large problem, but we like to target very finite problems and very inefficient aspects of workflows in order to automate, in order to be able to deliver that ROI very quickly.
That's exciting. Gosh, I listen to a lot of pitches from founders and from salespeople, and my general first course filter is if it sounds like a LinkedIn page just barfed into our conversation, I just automatically rule them out and assume it. If your pitch is that buzzword laden, how unimpactful is this going to be? But I've yet to hear a single person talk about achieving ROI in such a brief amount of time. How do you do that? Gosh, that's huge.
Yeah, so the way we do it is we focus on it was kind of what I was describing earlier, very finite problems.
Mhm.
as an example, I mean, and there's so many, a lot of our clients, we work from private equity firms to real estate firms to sports franchises to fashion startups to, I mean, we kind of cover the board. What unifies all of them is that there are workflow inefficiencies, and generally it comes in like three different types, right? You have like kind of your lead generation, right? If it's a PE firm, it's sourcing deals. If it's a real estate firm, it's finding, real estate projects. If it's a fashion startup, it's finding clients for, for your platform. But there's an inefficiency in that workflow. And so one of the things you target is, okay, who's doing that job, right? Who's doing the sourcing? And you can imagine sourcing is pretty much analyzing a ton of data through a very specific lens, to see which companies or clients or people match up to the criteria that you're looking for. It's a perfect AI problem, and so we will target one specific aspect of your sourcing pipeline, and that'll be our first deliverable. And I think by limiting the scope, very intensely, because that to your point, it's not talked about very often that and that is still expensive. I don't even want to discount that. Like even with a we try to strive for a very quick return on investment. That being said, you're still spending a good amount of money. I mean,
Sure.
our companies are Fortune 500 companies, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to address finite problems, let alone large grandiose ones. So yeah, by limiting the scope and really understanding from the beginning what is the inefficiency, how can we fix it? Is it repeatable? Is it expensive? That allows us to deliver that ROI quickly.
That's awesome. So is that the answer then to the question? How do you deliver an AI model that's both affordable and produces a useful output? That you pick a limited scope of something that lends itself to AI's strengths, like sorting and pattern recognition and things like that.
Yeah, we use the acronym, it's a terrible acronym, but it stands for, is it expensive, is it repeatable, and is it repetitive?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing a process that is those three things, expensive can be, your time, does it require you a lot of time, repeatable in how often you do it, and repetitive in the nature of what it is. And if it's those three things, then it lends itself very well to being, automated. Oh, and as a counterexample, what doesn't lend itself well, is if you once you've targeted, a business or a real estate piece or a client that you want to bring onto your platform or someone you want to sell to, there is a human component there that I think shouldn't be discounted, and
For
actually
sure.
reaching out to that person and having a conversation with them. And so we want to get our clients to that point a lot faster than they've ever been. And once they're there, they're so thankful to be there because it's where they can, it's where they can shine a little bit more as opposed to the dense analytical work that's required to get to that step.
Two things you said I want to comment on somewhat whimsically, especially the first one. As a former Marine sergeant and somebody who worked in signals intelligence and works in government contracting, technology, and intel, I have to say all acronyms are awful. They're the worst. And we have a ludicrous amount of them in the spaces I described. The second thing you said, less whimsical, far more important, is I love that you've brought up people twice. So usually when I'm talking to AI folks, it's as though they're looking for a robot future. They just don't bring up the human aspect at all. And at least as from my limited perspective and what I see of AI's development today, there's still a lot of things that people do way better than AI. And where I've seen it function well, it's when companies use AI to its strengths and not the bleeding edge of what they might get to soon, but focus on what it does really well. And it sounds like that's what I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's what you're doing and advocating.
Yeah, exactly. And Sam Altman, who I think is obviously incredibly bright, said something interesting that I found, which is there are two types of AI startup or AI companies right now. There's an AI company that is trying to work within the parameters of what the large LLMs can provide, and be able to deliver a solution that is a point solution for people that works very well, that doesn't require an insane amount of tuning, the process in which you go and make the LLM able to solve the problem. Uh, and it can actually deliver ROI quickly. And then there's a second one, which tries to take an LLM and apply it to a very large problem. And you spend so long tuning it that either one of two things has happened. One, you've spent so much money that in order to get the ROI on your investment, it's going to take a long time. Or two, the underlying LLM has now caught up to what you were initially trying to tune and has essentially put you out of business. And the great example that he used is that, if you're creating an educational tool to provide classes for different grades, let's say OpenAI right now is really good, and ChatGPT is good at creating classes for 8th grade. So you can either say, I'm going to target 8th grade, and that's the limit at where I'll go, but I'm going to do it very well, and you're going to be able to get your ROI quickly. Or you can say, I'm going to try to build all of high school. And by doing that, now you have to tune the algorithm over and over again. You have to really expand beyond what it's capable of. And by the time you get there, you've either spent a ton of money or the underlying LLM is caught up and now is able to do all of high school. And so I think that's the premise in which we approach these problems. Is not every problem is good to be solved with AI, although there are very good ones that AI does solve well. And if we can hit those, we can free you up to solve the things that you should be doing, the human connection.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm old enough to have been here through the personal computer revolution, the internet revolution, and the mobile communication revolution, and now AI. And it's shocking the similarities, not just in business cycle, but in the way that folks are creating companies and applications around it. Most recently, for the younger folks, when mobile became big, it was interesting to watch all of these app companies pop up and create products that it was obvious we're going to get sucked into the next operating system update. Like a silly example being, I remember when everybody and their brother had a flashlight app.
I was recently deleting apps, and I deleted a flashlight app because I saw it on my phone.
Yes, exactly. But you're seeing it now with these LLM wrappers that it's clear are going to be absorbed in the next iteration or the iteration after that of an update in the LLM. So we've been speaking, I think, at a pretty high theoretical level. Would it be possible for you to give a more specific example of a type of project that you've done for a company? Nothing, obviously, that's going to share information that shouldn't be shared, but just to give people a more concrete example of both what you're doing and what can be done in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of give a couple different examples over a couple different industries. The first one is actually where we started, which was doing AI predictive workforce turnover. We worked with one of the primary industries with a ton of turnover is hospital networks, and it's in the nursing unit specifically. And so we created for a number of hospital networks a model or a platform that allowed them to determine the likelihood of someone leaving within the next 3, 6, 12 months. And then, so we predicted when they were going to leave, and then also recommended targeted interventions to keep them. And so those hospital networks, it helped in two facets. The first one is obviously knowing when someone's going to leave. The ways to keep them are actually, we recommended solutions based off cost and time. And so the easiest solution that is very inexpensive, it's free, and requires very little time is recognition. And so if you know someone's going to leave, as long as you recognize them in the time period at which they may not even themselves know they're going to leave, it's actually a 3x likelihood of retaining them. So that was it was a no-brainer. So the platform on face, just being able to determine someone's going to leave, if you always use the recognition solution, you're going to be way further ahead than you were. And then the second way was through actual targeted interventions. And so we were able to tell hospital networks, you pay millions of dollars a year for certain, let's say, wellness apps. No one is that is not contributing at all to nurse burnout, which is then contributing to turnover. And here are actual better intervention sources to do it. Everything from schedule adherence, understanding the variability and the standard deviations of people's schedules over the week, to utilization adherence and all those different kinds of things.
Yeah, that's exciting all on its own. So I was married for 20 years, and my ex-wife's a nurse practitioner. And the schedule was abusive. It was crazy. And it's interesting. You mentioned recognition. I actually talk about that in my book, Destination Employer, quite a lot. It's one of the easiest ways to keep people engaged is to say, thank you for your excellent work. And it
Exactly.
costs nothing. All it does is create goodwill. It's the easiest thing. And so few people do that. So that's exciting. Let me ask you this. We've covered kind of a lot of material. If you could give any startup founder one piece of advice, Tyler, both from the position of someone who's founded several companies yourself and in your current capacity, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, from the founder lens, I believe that all good founders have a little bit of a rational confidence. There is something in them that if you looked at what they're trying to solve from a perfectly pragmatic lens, you would say there's more cons than there are pros
Yes.
at some point in time. But irrationally, you just decide that you're going to undertake this anyway. And so that's from the founder lens. I believe that like every good founder I've ever seen has a little bit of that irrational confidence. Then from the AI lens, I'm definitely a fan of kind of what we were talking about earlier of understanding the limitations that current LLMs pose, and then are you going to be someone who is going to deliver quick and deliver effectively and efficiently, or by the way, there's nothing wrong with kind of going more of the dreamer path and saying I'm going to target a problem that's so far away from any iteration an LLM will get to in the next couple of years that if I could hit it, I'll definitely beat him to market. But understanding that, where are you in that cycle, I think is very important.
Yeah, I think the most important thing you said in the latter half of what you said was understand. I think that might be the piece where a lot of people get lost is they don't take a moment to recognize where they're at. So if you're gonna take that star shot swing, know that you're taking that star shot swing, and your already low chances of success are that much lower. But if you hit, your win is that much higher.
Yep, and I bet you've got a lot of irrational confidence if you're going to do that.
Exactly. Or a very rich dad. Either way.
Or very rich dad.
But yeah, no, this is awesome. So this is a little bit off topic from what we were going to talk about, but I think related. And I hit on it earlier. One of the hardest things as somebody who would be implementing a service like yours or any other AI service or product is breaking through that hype. I jokingly gave my first filter of just listening for too many buzzwords. But when it comes to implementing stuff, that's so difficult to wade through all of the dreams to something that would actually produce. Can you give any advice in that area, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I guess the advice comes in the form of examples, right? Things I've
Sure.
seen LLMs do very well are in. I mean, I would generally actually use that acronym, right? Expensive, repetitive, and repeatable. I think it is a good one to diagnose is the problem, one that can actually be solved in a cost efficient way by an LLM. But LLMs as sources for lead generation or deal funneling, I think have been very effective. LLMs as support, from a chat perspective. I think the chat support has been extremely effective. We've seen a lot of firms with large help desks, really be able to automate that process. I think LLMs from the other actually way that's a good way to define it actually is, can you get a good true set? I think that's what a lot of people miss in the projects that they're targeting is, you still need to be able to tell the LLM what a good job looks like, whether or not it's from a chat perspective or whether or not it's, from any different type of perspective. And so if you have trouble defining what a good job looks like, it's probably going to be very hard for the LLM to determine that. So you've got to be able to really know, can I show it what does a good job look like, and do it multiple times from kind of a bunch of different lenses and a bunch of different angles. And then it's going to be very good at telling you how far you are away from a good job, different steps to achieve a good job. But you have to be able to tell it.
That's awesome. It's interesting. I think in all areas, AI has moved forward very quickly. I remember just a year ago, if you used an AI image generator, you wound up with these Lovecraftian horrors. that, that are supposed to be a real picture, whereas now they're pretty amazing with what they can do. Are there any areas in AI as it relates to business that you think will be the next big breakout, or the next area where, there's a big step forward?
Well, before I answer that, it's funny you said that because I've been recently I've been having fun with my hairstyles. And what I found is it's very good from an image recognition perspective is I upload a headshot, and then I ask it to style my hair in different ways. And it's actually led to me, I'm like, I think I'm going to try a buzz cut next. So I was like, oh, show me what a buzz cut looks like. And it's fantastic. It works extremely well.
Well, hold on to that thought when you get older, because if ladies dye their hair to stay looking young, the trick for guys is the short sides, because it gets rid of the white. You look younger for a lot longer. It's a hack.
I mean, I knew you look pretty young, so I was like, it's either the beard or the short sides. It's one of the
Yes.
two.
The beard has been a double-edged sword. When I started my company, it was full red. These days, it's more of gray beard solutions, but gray beard doesn't play well in tech, so I'll stick with red beard.
I love him. I think my biggest problem sometimes is getting people to think I'm older than I am. So I might take a playbook and dye this little gray.
Yeah, put a little salt in your pepper. It really is totally a conversation for another day. But it really is. When I first started leading, I was in my early 20s, just got out of the Marines. And I was the young guy in the room. Everybody that reported to me was older than me. Now it's the inverse, and I'm the old guy in the room, and it's such a different perspective. And the leadership challenges are different. Leadership is always challenging, but it goes from being taken seriously because people don't think I have the experience, to being taken seriously because people think that I'm not aware of changes in the universe, as though there were ever anything new under the sun ever. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So you have been an amazing guest. I thank you very much for being on. Before we wrap up, though, one last AI question. Okay, so I'd mentioned I've been through, really, this is the fourth big change or big revolution. What do you think, if anything, that people aren't expecting from this AI revolution, that they're gonna either have to, from a negative perspective, or get to deal with in the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I think kind of bringing it full circle about ROI, we've now found that there are, and everyone's got a slightly different opinion, but there are ways to create these LLMs, and the Asian markets have demonstrated this very well, for very low cost, which is very interesting, right? Because we've spent in the US, tens of billions to hundreds of billions of dollars, generating these super sophisticated LLMs that are showing very promising results. But I think what's interesting, right, is LLMs are democratizing access to information, which I am a huge fan of. What's almost happening as a meta level is democratizing the ability to make an LLM, which is what the Asian markets are showing us. And so I think that's what I actually am very excited about, in the next 5 to 10 years, is we may get to a place where you truly have a decentralized ability to access this information because you can create it yourself at a super low, cost. We saw, certain ones have been able to do it for less than $10 million. I mean, obviously that's now, but 5, 10 years now, it may be in the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands of, dollars. And then every business or every person could have their own LLM. Like, you're not even using ChatGPT anymore. You're using, your own personal LLM. I mean, I think it's very cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I think also, adding to AI, when quantum computing leaves the lab and starts to enter the workforce, you marry that to LLMs. That's going to be both exciting and terrifying. But that probably is an entire other conversation. So, Tyler, thank you again for being on the show. You've been amazing. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, they could. So we've got a website at forenterprise.com. We have a LinkedIn page. We've got various amounts of media and news coverage, I would say. So any Google search will also pull up a variety of links. But yeah, I think it's if you want to find us, we're out there.
Awesome. And as always, for fans of the show, those links will be in the show notes. Anybody new to the show, don't crash your cars trying to write those things down. Just go to the show notes when you get where you're going and you'll find them there. And I recommend you do. Tyler's been an amazing guest, and I'm sure you could learn a lot from following me on LinkedIn and following for his continued success. If memory serves, you're going to be in an article here soon, correct?
I believe so.
Awesome. If it's out when this goes live, I'll include it in the notes. Thanks again, Tyler. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. And to the audience, thank you as always for listening. Continue being awesome, and we'll talk to you again next week.